Title: I was confused about my sexuality, but I was never confused about protecting my best friend throwaway. Fake names. This is long. I've rewritten this in my head 100 times before posting. I've spent most of my life believing I was straight, not because I felt strongly about it, but because I never questioned it. I dated boys because that's what girls like me did. Nothing about it ever felt wrong, just incomplete. Like eating food that fills you up but never actually tastes like anything. I assumed that was adulthood. That love mellowed out over time. I grew up in a calm house, no chaos, no shouting. My parents weren't perfect, but they were consistent. When something hurt, we talked about it. When something broke, we fixed it. I didn't realize how much that shaped me until I met Lena. Lena didn't come from calm. She came from noise, from emotional unpredictability, from learning early that love meant adjusting yourself to keep the peace. She told me once that silence scared her more than yelling, because silence usually meant something worse was coming. We met at work, but our friendship never felt like a work friendship. It felt older than that, like we skipped the awkward phase entirely. She told me about her boyfriend, Mark, early on. I remember thinking he sounded intense, passionate, the kind of guy people describe as a lot, but he really cares. When I finally met him, he was charming in a way that felt rehearsed. He paid attention, but selectively. He watched Lena closely. Too closely. At first, the red flags were subtle. Mark didn't like how much Lena laughed with me. He didn't say it outright, he joked about it. Guess I'm not that funny anymore, he'd say, smiling tightly. He corrected her stories, finished her sentences, gave her looks when she talked too long. When she was happy, he seemed irritated. When she was quiet, he seemed relieved. I noticed things she didn't, or maybe she noticed and ignored them. Somewhere along the way, my feelings changed. Not all at once, quietly. I started caring in a way that felt different, deeper, protective. I felt proud when she stood up for herself and anxious when she doubted herself. Her sadness sat heavy in my chest. That scared me more than anything, because attraction to women wasn't something I'd planned for. It didn't fit into the version of myself I understood. I told myself this was just loyalty, just closeness, just friendship. But then there were moments I couldn't explain, like the time she came over after an argument with Mark and curled up next to me on the couch, knees tucked in, breathing finally slowing down. Or how my instinct, every single time, was to move between her and discomfort, without thinking. I didn't know what that meant, I just knew it was real. Mark started to notice the shift before Lena did. He'd ask questions that sounded casual but weren't. How often do you talk to her? Why does she know that about you? Do you need her that much? Once, after a family dinner, he snapped in the car, not yelling, controlled anger. They like her too much, he said. It's embarrassing. Lena cried quietly while he drove. She called me later and apologized. For what, I still don't know. Her family loved me because I didn't require her to shrink. Her mom told me once, "You calm her down." Mark hated that, because Mark's biggest fear wasn't losing Lena to me romantically. It was losing control. I want to be clear about something. Mark wasn't abusive for no reason. He was insecure, terrified. He knew, on some level, that Lena was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He knew he wouldn't find someone else who absorbed his moods, forgave his sharp edges, and stayed anyway. And instead of rising to meet her, he tried to cage her. He monitored, he nitpicked, he guilted. When he felt her slipping emotionally, he tightened his grip. There were nights Lena would text me just to stay awake. Not because she was afraid of him hitting her, but because the emotional tension felt unbearable. Then one night, she came over wearing long sleeves in the middle of summer. I noticed the bruise. She noticed me noticing. "He grabbed me," she said quickly. "He didn't mean to hurt me." Something inside me locked into place. I was still confused about my sexuality. I was not confused about this. I would protect her. The Sunday brunch was supposed to be harmless. Jazz music, sunlight, family warmth, a few hours of peace. Mark wasn't invited. He knew that. He hated it. He texted constantly, called repeatedly. When Lena stepped outside to answer, I followed a minute later. She was shaking. "He says I'm choosing you over him," she said. "He says if I don't leave, he'll never forgive me." I remember thinking how telling that was, that forgiveness was always conditional with him. I didn't confess my feelings. I didn't push her. I just said, "You're allowed to exist without punishment." She kissed me then. It wasn't about desire. It was about safety, about finally feeling seen, and immediately after, she panicked. "I don't even know if I like women," she said. "What if this is just trauma?" I told her the truth. "Whatever this is, you don't owe me anything." That mattered. She went back to him anyway, because comfort is familiar, because fear can feel like home if you grew up in it. Then came the night everything broke. She called me crying. He'd shoved her during an argument, not violent enough to make headlines, violent enough to make her realize this wasn't getting better. I drove over, helped her pack, stood between them when he raised his voice. Mark looked at me with something like desperation. "You're taking her from me," he said, and I realized he believed that. The weeks after were slow, painful, ordinary. Lena doubted herself constantly, her sexuality, her decisions, her worth. I stayed steady, not because I was sure of everything, but because love, to me, had always meant consistency. One evening, weeks later, she sat across from me on my kitchen floor and said, "I don't know what label fits me, but I know I feel safe with you, and I know I love you." That was enough. I still don't have all the answers about myself. But I know this: confusion doesn't cancel love, and protection can exist before clarity. Sometimes you don't fall in love all at once. Sometimes you just refuse to let someone you love be hurt, and that's how it starts.